Welcome to the LDN radio show, brought to you by the LDN Research Trust. I'm your host, Linda Elsiegood. I have an exciting lineup of guest speakers who are LDN experts in their field. We will be discussing low-dose Naltrexone and its many uses in autoimmune diseases, cancers, etc. Thank you for joining us.
Today we're joined by Elise from the United States, who takes LDN for MCAS and functional neurological disorder, sleep and energy. Thank you for joining us today, Elise.
It's nice to be with you.
So could you tell us how long ago it was when you first noticed all these different symptoms?
Some of them have been from a very young age. When I was a young child, that would be the MCAS, mast cell activation syndrome. And then just low energy would just come and go all my life. So I can never say that I could look back at my history and say that I was ever well.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Functional neurological disorder, or FND. There were symptoms of that back when I was around 20. I'm now in my 60th year, but diagnosed with that in 2021.
Mm-hmm.
So I started to really see evidence of that, knowing that something was very wrong in 2015.
So as a child, what were you having to live with? What were you experiencing at that time?
It would be severe fatigue. So if I was in a bout of that, I never knew what triggered it. I would actually fail grades in school. But then if I retook that course and was feeling well, I would get high 90s. So it was definitely not my intellect. It was what was going on with my body. That was one thing. It affected my physical activities.
Mm-hmm.
So I could have lots of energy to play in a sport if I was feeling well, but not if I was in one of my attacks, if you want to say. I was constantly with infections growing up, on antibiotics quite a bit, and I would have just out of nowhere severe attacks, like it was allergy, so it would send me to the hospital. I'd pass out, I'd have hives everywhere, and I would have to be on shots. So that would come and go as a child.
Okay. And what about bowel issues? Did you have any problems with your bowels?
Yes, actually, when I was 11 months old, I was hospitalized. I didn't think I was going to make it. They don't know if it was a virus or cutting a tooth. We don't know what happened, but dysentery was extreme, severe, and they had to feed me through tubes to keep me alive. And then ever since then, up until about a year ago, bowel issues have always plagued me.
Oh, it's terrible. So
Yeah, it wasn't fun.
no. So as we know that MCAS can affect every organ in the body, than the skin being the biggest. Did it affect you psychologically growing up?
I would say, and I'm not quite sure if in my case, what fueled what, but just genetically, I know that my system is very sensitive. So what the thought was is when I had the MCAS, that it was actually just like what did the doctors say? It was like a programming issue where that the things that I was allergic to severely as a child, when I got retested, didn't show up as an allergy, but my body still was fighting it as if it was. So it was like it was becoming like a software problem that I could not get rid of. So I think from that kind of a life, I became very chemically sensitive too. I don't think I mentioned that to you. So that was an impact on my life because I didn't know where I could go what I could do, because if there was a strong smell, I would get very dizzy and possibly throw up, and I'd be out of commission. So the combination of the conditions really made it a struggle. Yeah.
Mhm. So how did you cope with things like scented soap and deodorant and perfumes, that kind of thing?
Well, I tried to be a brave soldier, so to speak, and let myself know that it wasn't going to kill me, and just tried to struggle through, not make any comments to people, and just would end up often going home and going to bed after I was with people. More lately now, I let people know in a very kind, loving way that what they're wearing is very strong, and some of us that can't handle chemical sensitivities are getting very sick. But actually lately, I am much, much better, and I'll be in a situation and the panic will start to come up in my body, like danger, danger, danger. And then I give it a couple of minutes and I say, I'm okay. I don't have a headache. I don't necessarily like how strong the smell is. I still let folks know that it's not appropriate. Like where I'm living, they have signs everywhere about no scents. So it's something that it's just part of educating people that it's not something that actually smells very good when it's so potent, but it's making some of us sick.
Yes.
But lately, say the last 6 months, it is improving continually, that I almost can say that I don't have a chemical sensitivity anymore, or it's in remission. So it seems like.
Mm. I can remember back in the early 80s, we had a friend that had bought some new perfume. I can't remember what it was called. And you're polite when people come and visit you, and the smell. When they left, I used to have to open the windows and the doors, and I used to say to my husband, that smell is giving me such a bad headache. And he said, you know, it's not just you, it's me too. You know, the smell is just so strong, and it's horrible, isn't it? When you get this headache and the smell just gets up your nose.
Yes,
and the smell won't go away.
Yeah, and I actually remember the scent, the name of the perfume that triggered my first really bad attack.
What was it?
It's Eternity.
Okay.
And then the next one was called Red Door.
I think this one I was thinking of, if I'm correct, it was called Poison. If you know that scent.
Sounds familiar, but
it was very, very strong. And I think even if she'd have worn a little bit, it would have still been too strong, if you know what I mean. But some people do like to put a lot on there.
and I learned that for me, so in my situation, I got to learn what the root causes were of what brought me to the point of the worst condition being FND, that on top of everything else, I learned what the root causes were. And one of the things that made a lot of sense to me was that my body doesn't really do a great job of getting rid of toxins. So the methylation cycle is very, very weak genetically, because I've done DNA testing. So slowly healing the gut, getting that pathway to start working, and then other things that I've cleaned up. What I see is happening is that I didn't have an overflow. So when in the past, when I became very sick and then got my first mast cell attack, and then later on got my FND full blown, it was when the system couldn't take anymore, and so it was just like screaming for help. And then as I have lessened all those stressors, then these things have calmed right down. Always being mindful that I don't mean I'm sensitive, like you look at me, I'm going to cry. I don't mean that, but just that my system is very sensitive and it's delicate. It can be very strong, but it needs to be taken care of. So I respect that and work with my system.
Are there any foods that are triggers for you?
Well, I am celiac, so I forgot to mention that. That's something that was discovered back when I was 17. So I avoid all gluten. And then when I was in my worst, from 2015 to 2022, what was happening along with mast cell being a software problem, which I feel like it was in my case, also other proteins, so grains, the protein in any grain and the protein in milk was triggering my symptoms as if they were gluten. So again, my wiring in my nervous system, and I don't know what pathway that is, was messed up. So I was on a very, very strict diet. I didn't eat anyone's food from 2021 to 2023. It was only my food. It was no grains whatsoever. I worked with a functional medicine practitioner, and we worked on, as we cleaned out the gut issues and I started to heal my nervous system, I would introduce food. So I introduced grains, which would have just been gluten-free oats to start with. And I checked to see how I tolerated that. Fast forward to today, I absolutely do not touch gluten. If I think I might have been glutened, like I've gotten some in my system, I have a special pill, but I don't just take it for granted. It's just if I've eaten someone else's food and they've assured me it's gluten-free, I still will take this enzyme. And that just makes me feel like I've done a little extra diligence in that case. So the only other food now that triggers me, I can do dairy, I can eat all greens, grasses. I couldn't hardly tolerate a salad. I'd look like I was 9 months pregnant. So the only other thing that really triggers me now, other than I do not eat junk food, so it would be sugar alcohols. They really rip my gut to pieces. So I stay away from that. But I keep to a very balanced diet. I would say I'm a mixture of a paleo/Mediterranean. And I don't overdo my sugars, but I don't skimp on them either. It's just a very balanced diet, quite enjoyable. I'm enjoying my food for the first time, I have to say, that I can remember. Because it was just so terrible before that. I'd have to wear a big baggy shirt because I didn't know if I was going to have to undo my zipper, because I never knew if I was going to be bloated. And then, of course, with a lot of bowel issues, you don't know if you're going to need the toilet. So it's a stress. So now it's not something that I even think about.
And when did you hear about LDN?
I was with a clinic. So in my area, I asked my doctor if I could be referred to a chronic care clinic. And my doctor said, it's going to take you probably 18 months. So this was probably 2017. I might be off a year or two. And I said, it doesn't matter. Let's just get me referred. And I wasn't even sure at that time if the doctor who was in charge of the clinic would accept me. But he did. So I was in with him. I'm still actually with the clinic, and I see this doctor every 3 months. He's kept me on you're only with the clinic for 18 months, but we're waiting for a neurologist, and it's hard to get this neurologist on board. So until we have someone else for me, he graciously keeps me on. So I'm very thankful for that. So during part of the program is different courses on how to manage your condition, because back at that time I could go for a light walk. I quit work. I couldn't work. I wasn't in bed all the time. I was able to get things done, but it was when I had a little bit of energy, and it was very obvious that I was pushing myself past what my plate, like, they say my plate is full. Well, my plate was very small and it was overflowing all the time. So a lot of the courses with this clinic is to help you pace yourself. And so you're getting to be with other people who have conditions. Most of them had severe pain, chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia. I was the only one with FND. And some of us did have multiple chemical sensitivity. So I felt a little bit on my own, but still could relate. And I heard a few of the patients talking about LDN. So when I was on, you also have a psychologist that you meet with while you're in the program. So I mentioned it to the psychologist after I did some research on it, that I thought it would be a good fit for me. And she actually didn't think so, because I didn't fit the fibromyalgia type symptoms necessarily. FND being out of their wheelhouse, so to speak, too, on how to manage that. The doctor understood it, but not the psychologist. So when I met with the doctor from this clinic, I said, I really want to give it a try, and here are my reasons why. And he said, well, I don't think it's going to work, but sure, why not? He said, would you mind, I'll send a referral over to your family doctor and we'll let her prescribe it. So I did that, and she'd never prescribed it to anyone. So she needed to do some research. And we both agreed that in my case, and based on the research from your website, that we should start really slow.
Mhm.
So I like to get things done quick. I really wanted it to be a 4.5 milligram dose, but we decided to start with 0.5 and just slowly build up. And it took around 5 months to get to 4.5. And that's where I've been now since January. And this is now August.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Wow. That's amazing, isn't it? So how did
Yeah.
LDN make you feel when you first started? Did you have any introductory side effects?
Yeah, I was pretty nauseous and I had some crazy dreams, but neither of those two things made me feel that I needed to stop. I just knew it happened every dose increase up until about 3 milligram. And then after 3 milligram, I didn't have any of the symptoms that I had each time I increased my dose. I was hoping it would help me lose weight. I'm not really overweight, but I was hoping it would curb some appetite, and it hasn't done that, but that's okay. Yeah.
Would you say LDN has helped improve your quality of life?
I would say that without it, I really, and I researched to see how this works. And I believe that the areas, and I'm not a scientific technical person, so I'll probably mess it up by saying what pathways and what part of the nervous system and the brain that it's helped, but I really believe that it's reset me. So even though I had done so much work with the root causes, that it was the reset for me. So without that reset, I don't know if I would still be suffering from the FND, the symptoms, which for those that might wonder what FND is, you could wake up and you can't talk. You could wake up and you can't walk. You can have constant tremors and shakes in your body that don't stop, that make you want to die. Really bad seizures that just won't stop. Now, being that it does for a lot of people, trauma is a part of the issue. And for me, that is a piece of it, but it was like the final straw. It was not the cause. And I don't know if it can be for anyone. It's just a multiple things that happen and the body says no more. So again, to me, that was part of I needed a reset. And my doctor had mentioned one of the rewiring brain programs. One of them, I think her name is Annie Hopper, how to rewire your brain. And he thought that I would need something like that. So what I feel that LDN did was that for me. It reset so that the conditions that my body still kind of felt like I needed to hang on to, my body was safe to now make that shift with all the good foundation that I have put into place.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I feel like it's done. I sometimes wonder if there's still some things that I'm working on, some issues that have not gone away. And I wonder if increasing would help me. But at this point, I'm working on neurofeedback, and I'm also doing photobiomodulation. So I'll be doing infrared therapy on my brain and my nervous system. And I'd like to see what those two things accomplish. And if I still have some issues that are not getting better from this next phase of my health journey, then I'm going to ask to increase a little bit, to go up on my dosage.
Mm-hmm.
And my doctors are very willing. They respect that I'm in control, that I'm taking good care of myself, and they let me do what I like. So it's wonderful.
That is, isn't it? Truly
Mhm.
amazing.
Yeah.
What would you say to other people who are in a similar situation to yourself? Or if you could go back to yourself as a child and explain, these are the things that are going to happen and this is what you can do about it, what would you have said?
So I'm going to think about that for a minute, because it brings up some sadness because it was very difficult. So I was talking with a friend and I said, when we're going through a hard time, I actually had to have a brain surgery, and waiting for that felt like forever. And then once it was over, I said, wow, it wasn't as long. So when I look back at all the struggles and then today, there's nothing I can do about the past. It was a genetic circumstance. I never gave up. It took a long time. I wish it would have been quicker, that I would have known some of these things. Like I would have loved to have known about LDN a long, long time ago. But life is good now. I wasn't depressed. It was just a challenge. But the self-love that I have been able to develop in myself from making choices for my health. For example, I chose to move to a small apartment so that I would have the funds that I need for the health services that I need. So just little things like that. Saying no to foods that will bother you, taking your stand with your doctor, doing your research first so you know what you're talking about. And if you're having a hard time with your words, have an advocate with you, and just never give up. And even though it was, 60 years of my life, or let's say 58 years of my life, that was a struggle, it's pretty exciting to see the marvels of the body and how someone who I thought would never get well, which was me, to not give up and then to see health for the first time. And people are saying that haven't seen me for a while, that I look better now in my 60s than when they saw me when I was in my 40s. I don't know if I agree with that, but they must see a twinkle in my eye, because age is age, but they're seeing life. So that's pretty exciting and makes me feel really good. I love that feedback.
Oh, that's amazing. That's what everybody wants to hear, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. I feel a little funny when I was talking to a couple of friends who have my FND. I have a milder case, and I'm glad it never got full blown like some others have. So when a few friends wanted to talk to me when they realized that I was recovering, it was a mixed feeling, because how are they going to feel when I'm doing much better? I wouldn't say I'm fully in remission yet, but I'm getting pretty close. And then they're suffering so much. And both of them were very gracious that they were happy for me. And then they appreciated the input that I have, that maybe something that I have done might help them.
Uh-huh.
So that's how I feel doing this interview. Respectful that struggling is not easy, but not to give up, and the other thing that just popped into my mind that I needed to do was I needed to get off the social media platforms that were, I know we all need help, and I've been on them myself when I've struggled and I needed an answer to a question. But for me to have a diet of that constantly, I needed to stop, because I wanted to reprogram my brain that I am going to be healthy. So I didn't fool myself saying I am healthy when I wasn't, but I took all the steps possible to get there. So there was one YouTube person who does a lot of interviews with people who have MCAS, and I actually listened to a doctor who actually put my condition of FND in with that, which I kind of felt it was under the same umbrella. And I've spent lots of time, way more time now, constantly listening to stories of those that are getting better. Some of them were fast, some of them were slow. And that was really encouraging to me as well.
Good. Well, thank you very much for sharing your experience with us today.
It was my pleasure. I've been asked 3 times from different peoples, and I really wanted to do this one, and I said yes, and the other ones I haven't yet. So this is my first share, and I was glad to be available.
Any questions or comments you may have, please email me, Linda, Linda, at ldnrt.org. I look forward to hearing from you. Thank you for joining us today. We really appreciated your company. Until next time, stay safe and keep well.